On the 3rd of December 1957, the first snow of winter fell in Sycamore, Illinois. Despite the early darkness, two young friends convinced their parents to let them play outside 8-year-old Kathy Sigmund and 7-year-old Maria Ridulf. The girls had been eagerly awaiting the snow, even cutting paper snowflakes earlier that day. They met on the street corner, running along the sidewalk and ducking from passing car headlights in their innocent games. Then a young man approached them. He asked the girls if they liked to play with dolls. After that brief conversation, only one child would return home that night. Maria Ridulf's disappearance would transform this small Illinois town and capture the attention of the entire nation. Today we're exploring another missing child case, the story of a little girl whose disappearance would change everything. Thank you for continuing to follow these important stories. Maria Elizabeth Ridulf was born on the 12th of March 1950 in Sycamore, Illinois, to factory worker Michael and homemaker Frances Ridulf. The youngest of 4 children, Maria grew up with 2 older sisters and a brother in a deeply religious household. At 7 years old, Maria was everything you'd expect from a small-town American girl in the 1,950 seconds. She never missed Sunday school, excelled as a second grader at West Elementary, and was beloved by all her teachers. With her big expressive eyes and infectious laugh, Maria lit up every room she entered. Her closest friend was 8-year-old neighbor Kathy, and the two were inseparable, walking to school together each morning and spending their afternoons playing around town. Sycamore in 1957 was the epitome of safe small-town America. With just 7,000 residents, everyone knew everyone. Doors were often left unlocked at night. The most shocking incident in recent months had been someone chalking curse words on the street near the girls' homes. It was the kind of place where nothing bad ever happened until it did. No thefts, no street attacks. This quiet reality spoke volumes about Sycamore's innocence. When chalk graffiti was your biggest crime problem, nothing truly dangerous seemed possible. By December 1957, 7-year-old Maria was petite for her age, just 3'7" and 53 pounds. But don't mistake her small size for a quiet personality. Maria was spirited and vocal, quick to cry out when upset or frightened. She was particularly afraid of the dark, which could bring her to tears. That December morning started like any other. Maria and Kathy walked to school as usual, their parents comfortable letting them go alone. After all, nothing ever happened in Sycamore, and the girls always stuck together on their familiar route. Maria's older brother Chuck even kept an eye on them during the walk. After school, the girls headed to Maria's house to cut paper snowflakes, excitedly anticipating the coming winter and Christmas holidays. At 4:15 p.m. that same day, an unsettling incident occurred downtown. 2 other girls spotted a strange man staring at them intensely. Frightened, they ducked into a restaurant. When they emerged, the man was gone, but he'd left something behind. Photographs of naked women were scattered across the street. Meanwhile, Maria and Kathy made plans to play outside after dinner, hoping to finally see the season's first snow. Their usual playground was near the intersection of Center Cross and Archie Place, the same spot where those chalk words had appeared beneath a large tree, perfect for hiding games. At 5 p.m., Kathy went home for dinner, and the Ridulf family gathered around their table, unaware that this would be their last normal meal together. That evening, Maria pressed her face to the window, watching the first snowflakes finally begin to fall. Unable to contain her excitement, she called Kathy. Both sets of parents agreed to let the girls play outside, despite the gathering darkness. The friends met in the middle of the street and raced to their favorite spot under the big tree, playing their usual game of hiding from passing car headlights. Each time they saw approaching lights, they'd duck behind the tree, giggling. Then a stranger approached them. He was young, maybe in his 20s, with light hair slicked back. Kathy would later remember his face clearly, his large teeth with a gap between them, and his unusually high, thin voice. The girls had never seen this man before. He introduced himself as Johnny and asked if they wanted piggyback rides. Casually, he mentioned he was 24 years old and unmarried, strange details to share with 2 young children. Then Johnny asked, "Do you like dolls?" Both girls smiled and nodded enthusiastically. While Kathy declined the piggyback ride, Maria eagerly accepted. She loved when adults gave her rides, and her bright laughter echoed through the night air as Johnny carried her around. After the ride, Maria excitedly ran home to get her doll, leaving Kathy alone with the stranger in the darkness. Illuminated occasionally by passing headlights, Johnny casually asked Kathy if she'd like to walk around other streets or go for a car or bus ride. Kathy backed away, she didn't want to. Johnny then told her she was pretty, but Kathy sensed he was much more interested in Maria. She'd noticed how he looked at her friend, and something about that gaze made her uncomfortable. Inside the Ridulf house, Maria burst in while her father watched television and her mother read the newspaper. She wanted to grab her most beautiful, favorite doll, but Francis suggested she take an older rubber one instead. Within minutes, Maria returned to Johnny and Kathy. By now, Kathy was getting cold and decided to run home for warm mittens. She called for Maria to come with her, but her friend chose to stay outside with the stranger. When Kathy returned with her mittens, both Johnny and Maria had vanished. Kathy called Maria's name over and over, running up and down Archie Place, but no one answered. Finding no trace of her friend, she raced to the Ridulf house, where she met Maria's one-year-old brother Chuck at the door. Chuck and his friend Randy immediately ran outside to search for Maria, walking all the way to the school. Along the way, they spotted a police car. Later, they would regret not stopping it, but in that moment, neither boy imagined anything terrible had happened. Meanwhile, Kathy had told her mother about Johnny, and Flora immediately called Maria's mother. Michael Ridulf wanted to wait a bit before calling police the year before. Maria had wandered off to play in the cemetery without telling anyone, returning only after neighbors had organized search parties. But Frances wouldn't wait. At 8:10 p.m., she drove straight to the police station. Chuck continued walking the neighborhood, looking for his sister, still expecting her to turn up any moment. Then, near a neighbor's garage, he spotted something that made his heart sink. Maria's doll, the one she'd taken outside to show the stranger. That evening, the search began in earnest. Police knocked on neighbors' doors while volunteers combed the streets. Among those contacted were Ralph and Eileen Tessier, who lived nearby but weren't personally acquainted with the Ridulf family. Ralph owned a small hardware store, and when volunteers needed flashlights for the search, he immediately opened his shop and provided whatever they needed. The Tessiers had 7 children and lived modestly. Catherine, Joanne, Mary Pat, Bob, Janet, Nancy, and John. John, the eldest at 18, was Eileen's son from a previous marriage. Born in Ireland, he was notably absent from home that evening, a detail that would later prove significant. The Tessier daughters knew John was their mother's favorite, despite his frequent trouble. He'd been expelled from school for calling a teacher names and shoving her. Yet even then, his mother hadn't scolded him. There was something unsettling about John, something dark beneath the surface. That night, Ralph joined the other men searching for Maria, while Eileen helped the women prepare coffee and sandwiches for the searchers. The next morning, newspapers across the region ran headlines about the kidnapping of a little girl. The articles included descriptions of both Maria and her abductor, a young man wearing a distinctive bright blue, yellow, and green striped sweater. Even then, the exact time of Maria's disappearance remained unclear. Some reports said 6 p.m., others claimed 7 p.m., but the confusion over timing didn't slow the search. The entire town was gripped with concern for the little girl's fate. Maria's parents made desperate public appeals to her captor. "God forgives mistakes, and we will forgive too," Frances pleaded, begging for their beloved daughter's return. In heartbreaking messages directed at Maria herself, her mother urged her not to scream or fight back, promising they would be reunited soon. Frances knew her daughter's nature well. For a stranger to lure Maria away without her screaming for help, he must have earned her trust first. Otherwise, she would have alerted the entire neighborhood. Michael, Maria's father, grew angry with reporters who speculated about the worst-case scenarios. "Stop saying she's dead. I know she's alive. Nobody has any reason to kill her. I want other fathers to help me find my little girl." 11-year-old Chuck continued actively participating in the search efforts. Police gained access to neighbors' cars and basements, while armed volunteers scoured the town and surrounding areas. Helicopters circled overhead. Every house in Sycamore was searched, and the FBI joined the investigation, fearing Maria might have been taken across state lines. The case reached the highest levels. Even President Dwight Eisenhower was briefed on the situation. Despite the massive effort, searchers found only disturbing but unrelated evidence. A bag of drowned kittens and a blood-stained torn slip. No trace of Maria. Police repeatedly showed Kathy mugshots from their files, but she couldn't identify Johnny among them. Authorities placed Kathy in witness protection, fearing the kidnapper might come for her too. Her mother's words haunted the 8-year-old. Remember his face, Kathy. You have to remember his face, because you're the only one who can catch him. Only you know what he looks like. No ransom note arrived. No phone calls from the kidnapper. Police realized this wasn't about money. It was about an unhealthy interest in a little girl. The police chief believed the perpetrator came from outside Sycamore. Local people wouldn't do something like this, he insisted. The search intensified. Officers drained and dynamited a local quarry, desperately hoping to find something, anything. But it was all in vain. 3 days after Maria's disappearance, a woman called police about a young man named Trashner, who lived nearby and matched the kidnapper's description. No family by that name existed in town, but there were the Tessiers. On December 8th, FBI agents visited the Tessier home. The family acknowledged that their eldest son, John, did match the suspect's description, but insisted he'd been 40 miles away in Rockford, trying to enlist in the army. Phone records seemed to support their story. Someone had called Sycamore from Rockford at 7 p.m. that evening. The Tessier claimed it was John, asking his father to pick him up, but there was a problem. When police first knocked on their door the night Maria disappeared, Eileen had told them John was home that evening. Her daughters heard her say this, and they knew perfectly well their brother hadn't spent the night at home. However, police only spoke with adults. No one bothered to interview the children. A week after Maria's disappearance, detectives grimly instructed volunteers to watch for large gatherings of birds in the fields. They'd given up hope of finding Maria alive. Birds might lead them to her body. The entire town remained consumed by talk of the missing girl. The search never stopped. Police phones rang constantly. Even the thinnest lead might prove useful. The most important source of information remained 8-year-old Kathy, the only person who'd gotten a good look at the kidnapper. She made extraordinary efforts to remember every detail, with police calling her the most mature girl we've ever encountered. But even that wasn't enough. Christmas arrived. Maria's parents placed her wrapped gifts under the tree just in case she came home for the holiday and wanted to open them. Her present was a Maria's Dream typewriter, but no Christmas miracle occurred. 1 month passed, then another. The tree where the girls had played that fateful evening, which had stood as a painful reminder of the kidnapping, was finally cut down. Spring came. On the 26th of April 1958, a local man hunting for mushrooms discovered something strange beneath a fallen tree in the woods near a farm on the Iowa border. "I thought it was an old deer hide," he later recalled. "I got closer and saw bones. Maybe someone shot a dog? I looked closer. They looked like human bones. Then I noticed a jacket, but didn't think much of it until I saw the skull and hair. That's when I knew it was a little girl." Animals and birds had reduced the body to skeletal remains. The mushroom hunter returned to his car where his wife waited, and together they called police from the nearest farm. It was Maria. She was found 120 miles from home. Police arrived at the scene, but made a fateful decision. They took no photographs. The 8-year-old coroner didn't want pictures of the little girl splashed across newspapers, thinking it would be more respectful. Due to the body's condition, they couldn't determine the exact cause of death, but ruled it a homicide. When Frances saw Maria's black and white flannel shirt, she knew immediately it was her daughter. Official identification came through dental records. Maria was buried in a small white coffin on a warm spring day. Nearly 300 people came to say goodbye. Kathy was there too, accompanied by police officers, wearing a new coat her parents had bought for the occasion. 7-year-old Maria was remembered as a bright, happy girl who never missed Sunday school. This little girl had likely found eternal rest on the very night she was taken. Hope of ever finding the perpetrator faded with each passing day. The town changed, the people changed, but no one was more profoundly affected than Kathy, whose childhood ended that December night when her best friend vanished. "They robbed me of my childhood," Kathy would later reflect. "I was branded. I was the girl who played with Maria. Many parents wouldn't let their daughters play with me anymore. They were afraid he'd come back and take their child too. I couldn't wait to get out of Sycamore. And my whole life, I've wondered why he took her and not me. All those years, I kept asking myself why her. Was it because she was prettier?" Kathy may have been suffering from survivor's guilt, a phenomenon that could explain her haunting questions about why she was spared. Kathy did eventually escape Sycamore, marrying a man named Mark Chapman. His mother tried to discourage the relationship, but Mark was determined. He didn't care that everyone knew Kathy as that girl, Maria's friend. They built a life together in Florida, raising 3 children before eventually moving back to Illinois. Yet even after escaping, Kathy lived with a constant fear. Johnny was still out there somewhere, still free. He could come for her at any moment. Interestingly, Kathy wasn't the only one who left Sycamore at the first opportunity. John Tessier, the young man who matched Johnny's description, departed the town on the 11th of December 1957, just 8 days after Maria's disappearance. Years later, John would claim he rarely thought about Maria, though he sometimes remembered her. He insisted he'd only seen her once, walking down the street when he was 13 and she was just 3. But who exactly was this John Tessier? Perhaps examining his background might reveal something worth pursuing. John Tessier had moved to Sycamore as a child and dreamed of becoming a soldier from an early age. His parents met in London during World War II, and John spent his childhood with his grandparents outside the city. London was too dangerous, and his parents were often away on military duty. He barely remembered his father, who died in the war. After his mother found a new man in America, the family sailed to Sycamore to start fresh. John remained obsessed with military life, often wearing camouflage pants that earned him the nickname Commander from teasing classmates. He listened to military songs and, after being expelled from school, enlisted in the army. At home, everyone called him Johnny, the same name the kidnapper had given. After Maria's disappearance, John became a suspect, but his alibi about being 40 miles away in Rockford wasn't as solid as it seemed. Yes, at 7 p.m., someone identifying himself as John Tessier called the Tessier home from Rockford. But no one knew the exact time of Maria's abduction. If she was taken at 7 p.m., John had an ironclad alibi. But if it happened earlier, say, around 6 p.m., that alibi crumbled. Driving 40 miles in an hour was entirely possible. What's more, between 7:15 and 7:30 p.m., John did appear at the Rockford recruitment station. 2 military personnel saw and spoke with him. One thought he seemed strange, like he was under the influence of something. The other described John as appearing like a lost sheep. Most disturbing of all, on December 4th, another serviceman noticed John had a scratch on his lip. John's comment was chilling. "It's a good thing I wasn't in Sycamore yesterday, a girl went missing there." John also told the man he wouldn't become a suspect because his girlfriend's father was connected to the sheriff's department. The FBI questioned John on December 8th, and 2 days later, he took a polygraph test. During interrogation, he admitted to having a relationship with a young girl in the past, unrelated to Maria, he claimed, but troubling nonetheless. These strange details painted John in a suspicious light, but there was no concrete proof of his involvement, except for one witness who saw John's distinctive flame-painted car in Sycamore on December 3rd. Though the witness didn't see the driver, he knew John never let anyone else drive his car. His mother was deeply worried, but both parents stuck to their story. Ralph had picked John up from Rockford at 8 p.m. Only years later would John's sister Catherine admit uncertainty about that timeline. Maybe it was later, and did he even sleep at home that night? As for the polygraph, John passed without issue. Police believed a teenager couldn't hide involvement in such a serious crime. John Tessier was cleared of suspicion and left to serve in the army. John served in Vietnam, then became a police officer. But his behavior on the force was far from exemplary. He flirted with women, exaggerated his accomplishments, and showed a pattern of inappropriate conduct. He married, divorced, remarried, cheated, and divorced again. His superiors had grown tired of his behavior long before they finally fired him. He told crude jokes during lunch breaks and frequently pursued relationships with women who'd run afoul of the law. Colleagues disliked him, but what ultimately destroyed his police career was an illegal relationship with a 15-year-old girl. The victim was Michelle Weinman, a runaway who met the kind Officer John on the street. He gained her trust, brought her to his home, and let her stay there. Notably, another young woman was also living in the Tessier house, but John was only interested in Michelle. He attacked and raped her. Michelle immediately reported it to police, but they didn't believe her. "They treated me so roughly. They scared me so much. I didn't know how to tell them what happened. They started yelling at me. One of them screamed that I was nothing, homeless. He promised he'd twist everything to make it look like I wanted it, like I begged him for it. They promised to make my life hell." John was eventually charged, not with rape, but with indecent behavior with a minor, carrying a much lighter sentence. After losing his police job, John tried becoming a photographer with little success. Through this work, he met his next wife, Dennis Trexler. Dennis would later recall disturbing incidents, like John theatrically eating a banana in front of his young daughter from his first marriage, opening his mouth wide and rolling his eyes back in an overtly sexual manner. She also discovered nude photographs of the girl hidden in John's desk. None of these facts directly proved his involvement in Maria Ridulf's disappearance, but they painted an increasingly disturbing picture. The most chilling revelation came years later. John's mother, Eileen Tessier, was on her deathbed when she told one of her daughters something that would change everything. Remember those two little girls? The one who disappeared? It was John. John did it, and you need to tell someone. The daughter was Janet, who had been very young when Maria was kidnapped, but remembered how the town changed after that terrible night. Janet, like her other sisters, knew their mother had always protected John. But had Eileen really covered for her son right until the end? Eileen died on the 23rd of January 1994. 300 people attended her funeral, but John wasn't invited. His siblings said they didn't want to see him. Janet actually feared her brother. He'd once threatened her with a gun. After hearing her mother's deathbed confession, Janet decided to call the police, but they told her to leave the old case alone. She tried the FBI next. They referred her back to Sycamore Police. Janet spent years trying to get someone to listen. Finally, she wrote an email to the Illinois State Police. Sycamore, Illinois, December 1957. A 7-year-old girl named Maria Ridulf disappeared. Her remains were found in another county in early spring 1958. John Samuel Tessier is responsible for her death. He lives in the Seattle, Washington area under the name Jack Daniel McCullough. I have given this information to Sycamore Police. I've gone there again and again, unsuccessfully. I'm saying this for the last time. The information I have is sufficient to consider him a suspect. I won't repeat this again. I can't keep returning to these painful memories over and over. John Tessier had indeed changed his name to Jack McCullough, taking his mother's maiden name. Another sister, Jean, revealed that John had forced her into sexual relationships and made her watch while he abused other girls as well. Now police finally began reinvestigating the case. They re-examined John's alibi and discovered holes everywhere. Friends said John was supposed to give them a ride from a store that evening but never showed up. John had previously claimed he joined the search for Maria that night with a friend, even finding adult magazines that they turned over to police. But the friend later admitted John wasn't with him at all, and they never found any magazines. Remember how John gave Maria piggyback rides? Another neighbor girl, Pamela, revealed he'd given her rides too. She knew John and thought he was strange. The night Maria disappeared, Pamela's father said, "I hope that boy has a good alibi," referring to John Tessier. Since the key question remained when exactly Maria was taken, police returned to witness statements. Maria's mother, a construction worker, and a bus driver who passed the area all confirmed they saw no children on the street after 6:20 p.m. This timing destroyed John's alibi completely. If everything happened before 6:20 p.m., John could have easily driven Maria to Rockford and called his parents from there. But there was one more problem with his story. His girlfriend, Jen Everards, had initially told police they met around 9 p.m. the night Maria disappeared. Now, during the new investigation, she finally admitted the truth. She hadn't seen John that evening at all. Jen also provided police with something crucial: a 1,957 photograph of John. Previously, Kathy had never been shown John's picture because police simply didn't have one. But now they had a photo of young John, and they showed it to Kathy. Though decades had passed, Kathy remembered the promise she'd made to her mother, to never forget Johnny's face. Along with the photograph, investigators found an unused train ticket from Rockford to Chicago, the same train John claimed to have taken for his Army medical examination. The ticket had never been used. Police laid out 6 photographs of different men before Kathy. After just a few seconds, she pointed to one, John Tessier. When asked if she was certain, she answered yes, she had never forgotten Johnny's face. Excited investigators began planning their next moves, interviewing John's former wives. They learned a chilling fact. John's daughter had disappeared at age 34. Her body was found on a golf course in 2013. Her name was Marie, her middle name. By the time police came for him, John had been married to the same woman, Sue, for 20 years. She later recalled that he rarely spoke about his family and disliked his sisters. Before their wedding, one of his sisters had called to warn Sue not to marry him because John is a bad person. She didn't listen. On the 29th of June 2011, police finally arrested John Tessier, now known as Jack McCullough. During interrogation, John grew angry about his relationship with his sister. He claimed they were just playing adult games. When discussing Maria, he spoke with disturbing affection, calling her sweet, 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 and saying she looked like a Barbie doll, a strange way to describe a child. He insisted his mother's deathbed confession was false. She loved me. He couldn't explain the unused train ticket, and when shown his 1,957 photograph, dismissed it as a poor likeness. On the 27th of July 2011, John Tessier was brought to Sycamore in handcuffs. That same day, Maria's body was exhumed, a haunting reminder that while John had aged into an elderly man, Maria remained forever 7 years old. Her small white coffin was brought to the police station, where the coroner's office and John's holding cell were located. Forensic anthropologist Krista Latham finally determined the cause of death. Knife marks on the neck vertebrae indicated Maria had been stabbed multiple times. No DNA evidence remained on Maria's body after all these years. John Tessier faced 2 trials, one for Maria's murder and another for abusing his sister. At the trial, survivor Kathy Sigmund finally came face to face with Johnny. She stared at him without looking away. Janet Tessier retold her mother's deathbed confession, though another sister who was present claimed she only heard "he did it," without clearly understanding who he was or what it referred to. 2 prison informants testified that John had confessed to killing Maria while awaiting trial, claiming he strangled her. But this contradicted the knife marks on her vertebrae. They said it happened accidentally at his house while giving her piggyback rides that she fell unconscious, so he finished the job with wire. Both informants were serving long sentences and may have been seeking favorable treatment, making their testimony questionable. However, one detail they reported matched detective observations. When discussing Maria, John's demeanor changed completely. His eyes would light up with a calculating, disturbing gleam. Weighing all the evidence, the jury found John guilty. He was sentenced to life in prison. Prison was harsh for John. He'd killed a child and was a former cop, making him a target. He maintained his innocence, supported by his wife Sue and some family members who felt too many facts didn't add up. It seemed the case was finally closed. The killer was behind bars, and Maria's family and Kathy had their answers. But 4 years after the trial, Sycamore was rocked by shocking news. John Tessier was innocent. In 2015, John was granted the chance to present new evidence and challenge his conviction. This time, he focused on that crucial phone call from Rockford around 7 p.m., and they found the actual phone records. John had indeed called his mother from a payphone in Rockford. But there was more. Weather reports showed a severe freeze had hit that evening, coating all roads with ice. The 40-mile journey to Rockford would have been impossible to complete in an hour on those treacherous roads. The court reviewed this evidence, and in 2016, John Tessier was released from prison. Maria Ridulf's case was once again classified as unsolved. But who did kill Maria? Had Kathy identified an innocent man? In 1997, Sycamore Police Lieutenant Patrick Solers announced he'd solved the Maria Ridulf case. His prime suspect was William Henry Redmond, a carnival and amusement park worker with an extensive criminal history involving crimes against children. The problem? Redmond had been dead for 5 years by the time Solers identified him in 1992. In 2016, after John's release, police received another letter whose contents remain classified. It reportedly mentions yet another name they're keeping secret. There was also Johnny Hilburn, who claimed he was in Sycamore the day Maria disappeared, asking 2 little girls at Center Cross and Archie Place for directions to Rockford, the exact intersection where Maria and Kathy were playing. In 1958, Hilburn was convicted of abusing his 5-year-old daughter, but when shown his photograph, Kathy didn't identify him either. Maria Ridulf's case remains unsolved. John Tessier has sued the police department and awaits compensation for his wrongful conviction. Critical questions persist. Could John really not have made that drive to Rockford so quickly? Has anyone actually tested the timing? What time was Maria really taken? Did Kathy truly remember Johnny's face after all those decades? Should we believe a dying woman's confession? Most importantly, who killed Maria Ridulf? And will we ever know? After more than 65 years, this small Illinois town's most haunting mystery continues to defy resolution.